Well, what did she know, and when did she know it? The she is House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. The what concerns information about enhanced interrogation techniques that Pelosi has denounced. But has she painted herself into a corner? We report, you decide. Here is Chief Washington Correspondent Jim Engel.
Fox has obtained the official log showing which members of Congress were briefed about the enhanced interrogation techniques and what they were told.
It's an opportunity for those members to be informed, to object, and to stop, I would assume, what they didn't like.
But no one did object. Speaker Pelosi, for instance, was in on the earliest briefing.
If we're going to have a full investigation, Nancy Pelosi should be the first witness.
Ms. Pelosi was the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee in September 2002 and one of the first to be briefed after the U.S. captured Abu Zubaydah, a high-ranking al-Qaeda operative. Though Ms. Pelosi has repeatedly acknowledged she was briefed, she recently and suddenly seemed to deny it.
We were not, I repeat, not told that waterboarding or any of these other enhanced interrogation methods were used.
The emphasis seems to be on were used. Speaker Pelosi would not appear on camera today, but conceded in a statement she was told the techniques would be used, saying she was briefed on interrogation techniques the administration was considering using in the future. But even that is at odds with the official record of the briefing that she got along with Republican Porter Goss. The log says they received a briefing on EITs, meaning enhanced interrogation techniques, including use of EITs on Abu Zubaydah, background on authorities, and a description of particular EITs that had been employed. A current member of the Intelligence Committee says Pelosi's explanation doesn't hold water.
Well, I really don't remember what happened, and anyway, there's nothing I could have done about it. I mean, that's what the Speaker's doing right now.
Pelosi wasn't the only one informed. Some 65 lawmakers took part in 40 briefings once the U.S. started capturing high-ranking al-Qaeda operatives, such as Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the planner of 9/11.
That means they had ample opportunity to say what they thought about it.
In early 2003, Senators Jay Rockefeller and Pat Roberts were told in detail how the water board was used, for instance. And in September 2003, the log shows Porter Goss and Democrat Jane Harman were briefed on EITs, including a slide presentation where non-enhanced and enhanced interrogation techniques were named, described, and compared on the same slide. And on it goes for 10 pages, laying out in some detail what members of Congress were told, and all the while they were voting to approve intelligence funding without objection.
The House voting record, clearly Congress consistently voted to fund these programs and to move forward.
Now remember, much of this was in the first couple of years after 9/11, and the CIA was getting intelligence that helped disrupt several terrorist plots. Lawmakers apparently didn't want to stop that, but when it became public, some started criticizing a program they'd known about for years and had never objected to.
Well, the CIA now saying that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was briefed about the use of enhanced interrogation techniques, such as waterboarding, back in 2002. Which now seems to contradict what the Speaker is saying in a news conference, just said in a news conference 2 weeks ago. Look at this.
We were not, I repeat, not told that waterboarding or any of these other enhanced interrogation methods were used.
Washington Managing Editor Bill Salmon joins me now. Bill, were used seem to be the operative words here. She's saying we were not told that they were, quote, were used. Does that, sort of exonerate her in her understanding of what she was told?
I'm not sure the American public is buying that amount of parsing. I mean, she's claiming now that, well, we were told in general terms that here's an array of different enhanced interrogation techniques that might be used. Well, even if that is, let's stipulate that that's true. Why didn't she object?
Right.
Why didn't she say, well, wait a minute, this is okay? What's amazing to me, Martha, is that you would think the so-called torture debate would be harmful to Republicans, but if you look across the political landscape, all it's doing is hurting the Democrats. You've got the Pelosi contradiction story, you've got the Obama releasing the CIA so-called torture memos, which even his own Democratic CIA director, Leon Panetta, objected to, and a lot of Democrats even are saying, boy, that wasn't really helpful for our national security. And now you have, by May 28th, the Obama administration will be disclosing hundreds of so-called torture photos of that's going to bring us right back to the Abu Ghraib thing. And boy, that I tell you, that's a tricky thing. I think that's going to be a really big deal when those photos hit. not everybody's going to be convinced that was a good idea either.
I'm sure you're right about that, Bill. And, you know, I just want to talk about why we're talking about this right now. And one of the reasons is all of the discussion about the possible prosecution of Bush attorneys who were involved, who signed off on these techniques. And it goes back to Eric Holder sitting in his hearing saying waterboarding is torture in his opinion. So all of this, so then you've got Nancy Pelosi wanting to distance herself, saying, well, you know, if all these people are going to have the finger pointed at them, I just want to make it very clear that I didn't know this was happening.
Well, yeah, and you're right. The reason this is an issue now is because of these calls for a truth commission, for prosecution, and Nancy Pelosi has signaled that she's very open to these kinds of things. So as soon as she signaled she wanted a truth commission, I think people like Porter Goss and others and Republicans who knew that she had been briefed said, wait a minute, wait just a minute. When we were all worried about further attacks in the wake of 9/11, you signed off on this. Now that it's politically convenient to sort of, you know, start the witch hunts and the show trials, now you're sort of switching your position. So she looked a little uncomfortable at that press conference you just showed, where she was saying, you know, we were not, I repeat, we're not told about this. It sort of reminded me of that infamous Bill Clinton clip, I did not have, you know the rest, and you're looking at the camera, so she didn't look terribly comfortable. She looked like she was on the witness stand.
Yeah, and I'm not comfortable with this double standard for one set of dealing with things in the wake of what had just happened on 9/11, and then a different set when something hasn't just happened. You have to wonder, you know, if we were to be hit again, would all of these people sit in the same room and nod once again, oh yes, please do whatever you have to do, right?
Well, and you're right, it gets right to the point of, is it right to take now in 2009 and reach back through the span of history and look at something that occurred in 2003 and say, you know what, by today's standards, we're not really worried about the war on terror so much anymore. By today's standards, we're going to prosecute you. Is setting aside the fact that at that time we were on a war footing and we're maybe not so much on a war footing now. Is that morally right? Is that legally ethical? And I think that's why this Pelosi thing has such resonance, because it symbolizes what's going to happen to these Justice Department lawyers as well. They're going to be held to a different standard than they should be.
Yeah. Bill Salmon, as always, thank you very much, Bill. Good to see you.
Thanks, Martha.
I always thought silence was implied consent.
It would appear in this case
or at least failure to object is implied consent.
It doesn't appear that there was an objection.